A disturbing trend has emerged in which OnlyFans stars are posting suggestive content with filters over their faces to make it appear that they have Down syndrome. And they are using this as clickbait to funnel people to go subscribe to their monetized OnlyFans pages. And it's incredibly suggestive content where they are literally just face swapped with someone who has Down syndrome. They are faking having it in order to grab people's attention and keep them around for long enough to sell their spicy content. Joey Swoll recently posted a video about this phenomenon, bringing it to a lot more people's attention. Perhaps Streisand affecting it a little bit, but it's worth talking about because I like to keep up with the latest trifling schemes from these OnlyFans women.
Okay, here we go. So let's watch this clip that he posted. Muting that.
Yeah. Just, this is
Here is another
woman with
disgusting
Down syndrome
example
face.
of somebody using an AI filter to pretend to have Down syndrome in order to sell more subscriptions to their OF account. This video had over 70 million views and over 900,000 likes. First off, can't even believe that a filter like this even exists. But secondly, if you're somebody that supports this or you go and subscribe to them, you are sick in the head and you're part of the problem. I will say I am happy to see a lot of big creators are speaking out against this, and we've gotten a lot of these accounts taken down.
It's crazy that we live in a time period where it's like this is the brave hill to die on now. It's like I will take a stand against whores pretending to have Down syndrome.
Yeah, like just take a stand against the public whores.
Yeah, or against OnlyFans
Like
in general. That would
OnlyFans
help.
seems pretty bad.
Yeah,
you know?
that's what led to this.
And
Especially
that's the
the
problem.
ones that I've posted. So thank you to all of you. And after doing some homework, I found that these are the actual women that are doing this or their management teams in order to push traffic to their OF account, as well as there are people that are stealing others' content using the filter and trying to hustle and scam people. Regardless, if you're somebody that's doing this or somebody that supports this, shame on you. You need to do better. I will call out every single account that does this until this evil is off the internet.
I think I love Joey Swoll because his videos are always perfectly framed in his car. He's not holding his phone. He's got like a tripod up on the dash, and he's just.
I like to believe it's just balanced on the steering wheel.
That's what I would like.
That's
to
what I
believe,
do
too.
when I've had to, I've done that before.
But I looked into it further and I found one of the accounts that he used as an example. It is still up on Instagram. It has not been banned, but others have. I went and found those links as well. This is a woman who identifies herself as Nicole Rojas, and all of her videos, she is using this Down syndrome face filter. And I have no idea if all the videos are the same person, but they're highly provocative, using captions like, Down syndrome doesn't mean I can't give you what you want, ... A shy, lonely girl with Down syndrome no one was ready for. And will anyone ever look past my Down syndrome and just see me? So, you show the examples,
yeah,
correct?
Yeah,
she's wearing all of these provocative outfits. And I believe this is a real photo of the girl behind the account, but, you know, the filter is not real. And she is linked to her OnlyFans in her Instagram bio. And you can see that in all those photos, she hides her real face.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear what's going on here. She knows that this scheme is going to bring in more subscribers because there are people with a sick fetish for this type of stuff. And you know what?
Fetish for everything.
Yeah, of course. If there is...
It's literally, I don't even know if it's necessarily Down syndrome as much as it is, hey, you guys. It's
What?
literally
What do you mean?
From the Goonies.
Oh, I don't remember it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've watched it. So there was a report on this trend in Newsweek where they interviewed a lot of the experts, and they don't have a great take on it either. But we'll get to that in a second. The president of the National Down Syndrome Society commented on this, saying, "We have been monitoring the surge of fake online social media accounts utilizing AI to impersonate individuals with Down syndrome, and we're disappointed to see that this is growing in popularity." And some of the accounts also include links to Telegram groups and they found one that had more than 20,000 members. They're probably sharing content that is questionable legality.
Yep.
Yeah, and the language of these posts is often centered on exploiting a fetishization of Down syndrome with sexual undertones. So they asked a couple of these so-called experts about their thoughts on the issue, and I just found this tragically uninformed. Actually, no, they're perfectly informed on the issue. They really just are so stuck in their own academic bubble that they're not able to just say this is sick and wrong and should be banned forever. This was one of the comments. This type of content simultaneously fetishizes people with Down syndrome, while it also positions Down syndrome and sexual desirability as incompatible, says Dr. Amy Gaeta, a research associate at University of Cambridge. Down syndrome and sexual desirability are incompatible. Like,
well, unless you also have Down syndrome.
Okay, I genuinely feel like
Down
that's
syndrome person would potentially
not
be attracted to a person with Down syndrome. Like, there's couples and things.
I don't think they should be encouraged to do that personally, because I think that they're too immature to be allowed to have those types of relationships with or without someone who also has Down syndrome. And then she continued saying, there is nothing immoral or embarrassing about sex work, LOL. To use the image of another subject is using that subject as a shield and means for profit. This is the commodification of a disability. And another expert credited as a responsible leader in AI said the trend represents a troubling intersection of ableism, sexual exploitation, and the unethical use of generative AI technology. So it goes deeper than that, but they're not really willing to address the crux of the issue, which, as we already said, is the commodification of sex online,
right,
in the first place.
In the first place.
And this is the inevitable place where it leads.
Yeah, it does seem weird that you're like, splitting the baby over, there's gradations of pornography that are acceptable, and then there's other forms of pornography that are not. Like, no form of pornography is actually acceptable. Why aren't people capable of just saying that?
But because of the pattern where you have to do more and more outrageous things to keep people interested, to continue attracting new subscribers to an OF page, this is the extreme that we have reached, and it doesn't end there. I've seen there are adult creators on OnlyFans or similar platforms who cosplay as children, and not just with outfits or fake voices or what have you, but really using face filters to appear like they are like 5 years old, and with a fake persona and everything, trying to attract PDF files to subscribe to their pages. So this is just an example of us being like right on the precipice of that being normalized. There are also AI generated influencers who have Down syndrome. This one example is a virtual influencer who's been given the name Cami. I have no idea who created this virtual influencer. But she says, I'm making the digital world more inclusive. The first virtual influencer with Down syndrome, created by a partnership between Down Syndrome International and the virtual modeling agency The Digitals, creators of Shudu. 100 real women with Down syndrome volunteered their faces and mannerisms to provide the basis for this virtual influencer. And there is this concerted effort I've seen to kind of destigmatize Down syndrome, but in the process of doing so, they're not helping anyone who actually has Down syndrome. It's just a virtue signal. Earlier this year, I saw a PSA from a famous influencer who has Down syndrome, trying to prove the point that she can do anything that any other adult can do, and you shouldn't question it if she comes to a bar and orders a drink, or if she has a sex life, what have you. Let's show that PSA.
You assume, hey bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita. So you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own. So you don't encourage me to live on my own. So I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder. So you don't train me to hit harder. So I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare. So you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
So I don't learn Shakespeare.
E-I-E-I-O.
But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. So you serve me a margarita. So I
Bro, this editor's on one.
drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own. So I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder. So I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be? I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I can't swear, right? Assume that I can do that job. That I can go to parties. That I can have sex. That I can be on stage. Assume that I can.
Okay, I was like, whatever, generic early 2000s progressivism until the sex part. That was just weird as fuck to include in that at all.
It's so weird. It's so weird. And what you just saw is an example of someone with Down syndrome who is very high functioning compared to the rest of the population, who have an average IQ of around 50. That's like not even quantifiable. On the upper end, when someone has an IQ above 140, there's very little difference between 140 and above. Once you get below like 80, this person is not functional to do all the things she just listed, to drink, to live alone, to have a sex life.
I mean, just
to have any sort of normal functioning adult life.
Just going back to the boxing one, like, am I supposed to assume that nobody's going to try to hit her back? And in that case, who is it?
It just collapses the second that you give it as like a little bit of thought.
Yeah.
And it's all the appearances of advocating for their interests as this marginalized group, when in reality it does nothing of the sort. And when you spread this, type of propaganda, it leads to, as we just saw, people sexualizing a disability and thinking that that's socially acceptable and fine, when in reality, they are not on the level of maturity that other adults are. So they should not be encouraged or normalized to have sex lives. Like, that is not okay. How is it controversial to say this?
But the thing is, these are human beings, right? There's definitely gradations of mental disability. So, I mean, we've seen a model with Down syndrome, like that was a thing. There was, in the 90s, there was a TV show with an actor who had Down syndrome, and he was like very popular. And there's definitely different levels of disability, just like there are with physical disability. So each person has to, just like anybody, right? Each person has to set their own expectations and has to like express what it is that they're capable of doing. Like, it's not that much different in terms of, you have a child and you think like, okay, my kid has speech therapy and he has whatever else, all these other kinds of what are they? There's like occupational therapy and different things. And so you set expectations for your kid, and a lot of people will set their kids' expectations low, but like, set your kids' expectations as high as they can accomplish, or teach them to, set high expectations and then have them encourage them to go higher than that. So if this is a woman with Down syndrome who is capable of living on her own, capable of having a relationship, capable of holding down a job, then by all means, that's not going to be everybody with Down syndrome. That may be her. It may, it may not be her, but like, based on this PSA, who knows, right? It's just an advertisement. But I think I think that everybody has their own life and has to choose how to live it, in terms of what they're capable of. And I don't think that's bad. Like, people that I've known with Down syndrome have jobs, they get apartments, they work it out. It's a different level. They're not going to law school. They're not going to be in the administration, but like, they're working it out. They're working out some semblance of a life.
Sure, but just like we don't listen to a 9-year-old's opinion of what they're capable of and we decide for them.
But she's not talking about that.
Is...
She's talking about somebody who's capable of living on their own. And,
okay,
and
but I'm talking about
life.
someone who is intellectually impaired. They don't really get to decide what their limits and responsibilities and capabilities are. Just like a 9-year-old doesn't get to decide that they're old enough to drink.
You guys are just talking
the people
about
who know
opposite
them,
ends of that gradation that
right.
you're talking about.
The people who know them and are their caregivers are the ones who get to decide.
You're talking about the extreme end of the spectrum, and she's talking about the other end of the spectrum that's closer to somebody of average intelligence.
Well, the girl in that video for the PSA is the extreme end of the spectrum for Down syndrome.
In what way? Like
in that she is higher functioning than the vast majority, and yet it's being presented as propaganda to convince people who watch this ad, oh, I guess all Down syndrome people are just able to live normal lives.
In the same way that they've turned autism into just means you're quirky. Or
it's a superpower,
Or that
right?
it's a superpower, which, that's...
Spreading the idea basically that, you should treat them like you would treat anyone else, which is clearly a bad idea.
Well, you treat everybody in terms of, like, you meet people where they stand, right? Like, if this girl is capable of all this stuff, I mean, I wouldn't cast her as Lady Macbeth necessarily, but, if she's capable, then you meet her where she stands. And someone else, you meet them where they stand. You can't just make the assumption that they don't know. I used to work with this not-for-profit. It was a temp job. And it was a very weird temp job. But the temp job was about, I was basically doing like admin support for a home for mentally retarded adults. And that was the term at the time, was like mentally retarded adults. And like there was one day when the SEPTA system, which was public transit in Philadelphia, was on strike. And so none of them could go to work. And they all had like different jobs. Like somebody worked at Wawa. Someone worked, doing like support for something else. Like everyone had like some little job. People worked in cafeterias. There's a lot of food service. So no one could go to work. And somehow everyone, like 10 mentally retarded adults, ended up in the office with me. And I was supposed to like give them jobs to do, which was weird because I was like 22, 23. And like I was my own version of a mess. You know what I mean? But like I was supposed to give them jobs to do. And the level of capability was drastically different for everybody. And there was one man who was like just mentally disabled, like just on the other side of it. And so he knew that he was not like everybody else. He knew that there were connections in his brain that he couldn't make, that he wasn't capable of making. And he could see it and he could feel it. And it drove him insane. Like he couldn't he was like, he could tell that he was like just too incapable intellectually, but he could see where that difference was. And he was far less comfortable with who he was than the people who were like, had like 50 IQ or something, who were like, I'm licking envelopes and then we're ordering pizza. Yay. Like that was, and so he had a much more difficult time assimilating to life.
That must have been very difficult.
The other ones. Yeah, he had a crazy story. Like he had been living with his parents. Do you want to hear a wacky story?
Before that, I have a $20 super chat that we missed.
Color anyway. It was a very
The Last
weird
of My
story.
Kind said there's a YouTube channel where it's a chef with Down syndrome. It's awesome. Because all he does is smoke ribs and brisket. He's very good and the food looks good. Unrelated, if Phil wants to get into voice acting, call Seamus.
There you go.
That's a good idea.
He would be a great animated character voice.
So you were about to...
Oh, he had this
get
crazy
into
story. Yeah, so he had been living with his parents for his whole life. And then they were out of town and they left him alone for like a weekend, or maybe it was even just an afternoon. And he went to the Backpage of, Backpage at the time, like it was, he hired a bunch of escorts to come over to the house and
oh my gosh,
and engage with him. And so then they wanted money, right? They were like, now you have to pay us. And he was like, I don't have any money. And so they left.
Thank you. So So they left.
They left, and then hours later, their pimps showed up and beat the hell out of him. And they beat him up, and they stole a bunch of his parents' stuff. They stole like his mother's jewelry. They stole all this stuff, and so his parents were like, "Well, you can't live with us anymore. Like, this is not. We can't do this." So he ended up living in this like adult home for mentally disabled people. Yeah, it was crazy. And
Wow.
Yeah, and so there we were in the office, and everyone's licking envelopes, and he's like, "I'm hearing this story," and I'm like, "Wow, oh, okay there, fella."
Okay, I'm sorry if this makes me sound like an evil person, but I just don't think that someone with a story like that should
Crazy story.
Should
Crazy.
be, responsible for themselves as an individual without caretakers. That's just
Well, he wasn't. Yeah,
outrageous
he had
to me.
caretakers. Yeah, he definitely had caretakers.
Yeah, and it's not that 50 IQ is the bottom end of the average. It is the average for people with Down syndrome. And just going to be honest, and apparently these people do exist, if there is someone out there who is not disabled in any way, who looks at someone with Down syndrome and finds that sexually arousing in a fetishistic way, they are sick in the head. As Joey Swoll pointed out, they are sick in the head, and they are being catered to by a group of OnlyFans models who are equally sick in the head, if not more. And they should be stopped, and this should be banned from Instagram. And I'm shocked that these pages are still up and unencumbered from the scheme that they're pulling with these people and stealing people's content as well to do this. It's gross.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.